Hey, everybody. All right, it's 1 o'clock. Well, it's 1 o'clock at Mountain Time anyway. So, um, hey everybody. I'm Cassidy. If you've been here before, you've probably seen me rambling on about nothing. But thanks for coming to the seventh meeting of the AI Special Interest Group. So, I don't know if you guys saw the kind of the plan for what we're doing today. So I have literally zero agenda for today. Honestly, today I kind of figured it'd be a good. It's it's an incredibly busy time. It's the end of the semester. I just got back from a 10-day vacation, which was lovely. Digging out of emails and everything else. So I have nothing to present to all of you. Basically, my hope for this session was just basically like a kind of an open discussion, office hours, tell us about the projects that you're working on, get feedback on ideas that you have, ask questions that you haven't gotten to ask or haven't gotten the answer that you're happy with about. So that's honestly what my plan for today was. So I don't really have anything, but if anybody has um, got to see that on the PLC, kind of that's what the plan was for today. If anybody's got questions or projects they're working on or anything like that, feel free to unmute, turn your video on if you're at a place you can do it. And honestly, I figured we'd just chat as long as people want to hang out. So anybody use AI this morning and it worked well or didn't work?
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm relatively new to PA education and definitely that AI. And I guess I was just curious on if anybody was using AI in like teaching and some applications and stuff that we could use to try to facilitate this with our students.
Anybody want to jump in? Otherwise, I have my giant spiel. So that's a great question, Catherine. So I started out last right this about this time last year, just learning about this stuff. But like in as far as for the students, as far as kind of integrating it into your students' use. So I did I think it was a 5-part. I did it as a research project. I still haven't looked at the data. Hopefully, once I get through all the emails that I had, that's on the docket for, I think it's next week. I have some time blocked out to look at data. But I did a 5-part basically student focused educational series for our incoming didactic students on appropriate use of AI. Because over last summer, our program developed our AI policy around student appropriate use. So basically, it was geared towards ensuring that students kind of knew, how to use it, kind of the pearls and pitfalls and basics around it, and then how they could implement it in their use as a student, as a PA student. So, and those materials are posted in the PLC. Um, if you log in to through the PAEA website and the member community, there's the professional learning communities in there. There's the AI for PA education, and then in the kind of top right section on the page, there's a file thing at the bottom, and if you go view all, that all those PowerPoints that I used or how I presented it to our students are in there. So you're welcome to look at that and kind of see how I approached it or whatever else. Linda?
So I had an interesting occurrence in class today. We were talking about, starting to talk about GI, that organ system. And a student came up to me and told me that he couldn't read currents. He said, I just can't get through. So what I did is I put the whole chapter in ChatGPT and asked it to explain it to me. Um, Now we'll see what happens because we still have to go through, the rest of my lectures and PowerPoints and whatnot. But I'm curious to see how he does on the exams and how well that did work. But I was wondering if anybody has ever had anybody say that or express that before.
I, I've had students that necessarily take a whole book chapter. I don't think my students know that there are required books, to be honest, for our program. So I haven't had them do a whole chapter. And I think maybe that's a little too much for ChatGPT to be able to summarize, just because it's gonna give a very succinct, probably more succinct definition. But I think my students use it all the time to explain kind of more individual type concepts
Mhm.
or aspects of whatever they're learning. My students have found it incredibly useful just using it to explain, like for our physiology course, our molecular and cellular concepts course, explain different stuff in different ways because we as faculty can explain it our way, and the book or the PowerPoint or whatever can explain it another way. But I mean, they can get it explained to them however they want. Make it a basketball analogy, things like that. So I've had students who do that, and it really, or explain it in a different way, compare it to something in real life, that kind of thing, and it's been super, super helpful for them.
Because I'm thinking about if we had a concept and just make it, a simple concept, and we had an explanation from Chat GPT versus a lectorio video versus them watching a YouTube, you know, medic site, type of thing. I've never done it, but I think it would be interesting to compare, the different approaches um, versus professor teaching, and just to see all the different ways that that information would come to them and how it sticks the most. So that's kind of just what I'm wondering. And maybe someday if I have time, I'll do that. But you know,
David, I'm going to ask you to chime in on that. So, David's congratulations, by the way, Dr. Banal. Um,
Almost. They have to confer it, but it's
right.
everything's done.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, the work is done. You just have to
Yes.
wait on the
Yes.
institution to finish it up. But I'll let David talk about that. I feel like you probably can speak more eloquently on that aspect than me as far as the performance of it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just it's really funny that it's interesting that you're mentioning students with an aversion for reading books, which I've experienced for a long time, which makes me crazy, but it is a common story. So I'll set that aside for a second, that I don't understand why that is happening so widely in the PA student community, but it is. Um, Therefore, how can we get folks to engage with the actual text that's there? Because there's some conversations out there in the health professions education world about necessary difficulty. Like that there is a point where you have to actually work hard to achieve hard. No pain, no gain works in the gym, it works in the classroom. However, it comes to, is there a way to leverage these things to make it work? Yes, I think that there is a story about students engaging with it. One way that I successfully engaged with it once is I took a chapter that I thought was particularly important, and I would create questions about every couple paragraphs in the chapter uh, based on the text. And I told the students what I was doing. I said, I created a quiz. It's take home. It's in the order of the actual chapter, and it was worth minimal points. It was a formative assignment, but it was a way that they read the chapter and then saw what I thought was important and went back and forth. I think there's a number of creative ways to do that. Um, but I think that you're onto something, Linda.
And Linda, there's a whether not within PA education at this point, I'm hoping that all of us will do this work, but they're in basically every other facet of education that I've found that there are studies that have come out showing the effectiveness of properly prompted large language models and different platforms, basically like AI tutors. So meant, basically prompted appropriately so that students interact with it, not in a like a give me the answer to this thing, but using it as a true tutor is highly effective, like more effective than kind of generally well accepted active learning strategies in many cases. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's gonna be interesting to see. And in fair disclosure, I'm a physician and I graduated medical school. Don't anybody laugh because I can see some of you. I graduated medical school in 1986. So, the way we were educated, walking up a hill 2 miles to and from school, the same hill and all, our education has totally changed, from where we had to read the books and we did certain hands-on things to all these large learning language or AI models. And I find it fascinating how that information was disseminated to us in one way and how they are this way. And I honestly think some of these techniques are much better, actually, and wish that I had experienced them. But I'm trying to merge the two different ones, the different decades actually in learning. And it's been an interesting experiment. So,
yeah, Christopher.
Yes, I'll just raise a slightly different topic. I have a couple pre-PAs that have sent me their essays to review, and I've taken a look at them. And the first one I looked at, the first thing I wrote her back was, how much of ChatGPT did you use in this or AI? And why just use it for a little bit of guidance? But the language is this flowery, creative writing style. And I'm looking at the emails that she sent me, and nowhere in there does it reflect that type of quality of writing. And she has an engineering background. I mean, this scares me in some ways for the future of admissions, in that we can't entirely rely on the quality of the writing and the content. Unfortunately, the content wasn't organized in any logical sequence. We're used to, three main points, tell me something and explain it. That's not the way that ChatGPT wrote this for.
I'm just pulling up. My cat just disappeared. Oh, I got a message from Steve. I'm asking if there were thoughts or ideas as far as faculty workshops for like the different national meetings on like AI prompt or applications of it, things like that. I actually did submit along with a few other people from the special interest group to do to do a session, one of the kind of the workshopy type sessions at PAEA. So we'll see if that gets accepted. But I'm hopeful that there's going to be some opportunities for us moving forward at the different meetings. I think it just depends. It depends if we put them together because I honestly don't know that there's anything other than us within PAEA that's putting together anything like that, if that makes sense. Laura?
Yeah, I think the conversation about AI in admissions is a whole thing unto itself, right? So not only, I mean, the initial idea of your personal statement and whether or not it was just organized versus composed versus edited, but also in the actual interviews it's themselves, when we were asking a question, there was concern that they were literally typing the question in as we were asking and then using the answers as they got them. So whether it was, well, we're going to bypass this by having them do like a writing sample with us, something like that. It's infiltrating, I guess, more than even just you would think that superficial, like topical kind of way.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. So I haven't heard back from the CASPA steering committee yet because they want to actually meet with some members of the special interest, the AI SIG, to talk about PAEA's policies moving forward. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's in the works, kind of the what PAEA's policies are going to be in the future. So they're working on it right now. It's kind of that little click box. I didn't use any AI for any part of my application, and I think they realized that that's not really possible to do, honestly, at this point. So they're working on they are thinking about this from a policy standpoint as well. And Laura, I know for a fact. So uh, I've had multiple people talk about the idea because many programs have gone to virtual interviews, which there are incredible positives for. But then also you have that possible negative coming into it as well, where you might not be getting real authentic answers from your applicants and things like that. So I don't know. You can have it both ways, and it's hard to know whether the benefits outweigh the risks or the risks outweigh the benefits. So it's
And I
hard.
can put in the chat like the I've been watching what some of the med schools are doing. So this is their little blurb that they've added to their application.
Did they add that to their supplemental application, Laura?
So I am not super familiar with the process, but it's the AMCUS, like the
Oh, okay.
AMCS, like the general
Yeah,
initial. Yeah.
gotcha. So that's theirs.
So I'm gonna read you a little statement here from Anthropic. If you know, Anthropic is the company that built Claude, and is their founder. And he's commenting on observations of the educational system in Denmark. Okay, so I was chatting with a friend who went to university in Denmark, and he was explaining how AI isn't disrupting education there as much as it is in the U.S. Denmark barely assigns homework. They have longer school days packed with collaborative work, discussions, and projects. Students learn by doing things together in person during school hours. Meanwhile, the US built an entire academic culture around take home essays, problem sets, and individual assignments, the exact task LLMs currently excel at automating. Then COVID hit and we doubled down, making everything remote and asynchronous. We accidentally designed our education system to be maximally vulnerable to AI. Time to make learning asynchronous and social, or time to make learning synchronous and social again. Use the school time for the human elements, critical thinking, debate, interpersonal relations. Let AI handle the mechanical stuff we used to call homework.
Yeah. And
And
I'll be
to me,
honest,
that's
and I'll be honest, Even like that's what I've been doing. Like I'm letting the AI do what felt like homework to me, even as a faculty member. I'm starting to let it take over a little bit more, um, to allow me to spend my time on the stuff that my brain has to use
Right.
its
I would say that
power
it's
for.
you can view it one of two ways. You can view it as the all evil personality that's going to take over your life and basically run the entire world. Okay, that's one extreme viewpoint, is what I would say. The other viewpoint you can look at it it's just a tool. Okay, a tool is only as useful as when you use it, and so you really need to figure out what you can use it to your advantage. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I hear faculty complaining about how much grading they have to do, how much the administrative tasks they have to do are cumbersome, etc. All of that stuff is, in my mind, that's open goal for like, why are you not using artificial intelligence to help you do that kind of stuff? It is extremely well set up for doing that stuff. And I use it all the time to do those type of tasks as if I see the opportunity to automate something and improve the educational experience for the student, then I use it for that and I try it out to see what it can do. It's incredibly good at making content. The advantage you can do is that you can make your own content and then you can inject stuff into it in order to provide, I would say, a much more diverse and overall, I would say, more comprehensive experience.
Yeah. Lindsay, did you have something?
Yes, and I apologize if this is something that's been discussed in previous sessions. I've only been here for some of
Hi.
them. Do y'all have a way that you can run something through like an AI checker to see if AI has been used for it? Is there any that are reliable at all?
That there there can be arguments made, but I'd say no. Um, the vast majority of studies that have been done on the checkers have shown that they're not they're not reliable. You can get some metrics out of those that can give you an idea. The best way is to be able to. Most of the studies show that the AI checkers will give you false positives and false negatives, can be biased against certain populations and their responses. So most of the stuff I've seen have not really recommended using those. It's more of a we can't if we're going to use AI to grade, we wouldn't be able to tell, we wouldn't be evaluating that writing from a student compared to the other writing that they did 6 months ago, and the AI is not going to do that for us. So yeah,
I'm
John, did
just
you have something to add?
Hey everyone. I was just going to say our former chief academic officer was actually very big into AI, and he mentioned that there was some liability as well if you try to use those checkers as a way of saying, or implying that they had done that, or even once they're in the program, you know, not accepting work as a result. I guess legal precedent had been set. They were allowed to use it. I don't have a case or anything handy that I could provide, but just that there was potentially some risk on the school end as well if we tried to say no or use those tools to accuse students of doing that.
Yeah, I think I see the headlines, and I usually read about the first three or four paragraphs on LinkedIn. I saw a LinkedIn post. There was a lawsuit that just recently got heard and settled on a basically a student that got falsely accused based on an AI tracker type thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I use it every single day, whether it's personal or work related. Or I mean, it is fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's out there.
Yeah. I'm just scrolling through the chats. Sorry, my Zoom links. I'm going to delete the other one. Hopefully I don't know if it'll delete it off of everyone else's thing or it just won't work anymore. Um,
So Cassidy, in regard to that, I actually signed up on the PAEA website, and I think that one's wrong because I had gotten like the information from that. So it basically sent me the link
from the
that
new
sent
one?
Yeah,
It sent you to the old one.
from the one that's up on the AI SIG group. Because I
But is it
found
the
I
one
wasn't,
now? What is it the one now, Ewan, or
yes,
was it the initial one? Oh, well, that's a problem. Then I need to get in touch with them to
yeah. Because
make sure that
I
works.
wasn't getting your email, and I thought that's why I emailed you and said, hey, is the meeting on this week? And it was the following week, and I hadn't gotten the email. So I joined the group again on the PAEI site, and it sent me to the old the
Yeah,
old site.
well, because did it have you go through the registry though? Because the old
Yeah,
link went straight to the meeting, and it went through the registry, but took you to the old link. That's a problem.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll try and figure that out before our next one.
And I sent the new link out so everybody
Yeah, I
who is
got it right.
joining shows
Thanks.
my name.
Everybody's Alan. Lots of
Yeah.
Alans. I love it.
So you can click on your own square, the three dots, and update your name if you'd like.
I just noticed that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I promise you
I'm
don't need multiple Allens.
yeah.
All right. I'll see if I can. I'll see if I can get the link stuff figured out. I'm sorry, you guys.
Technology,
Um,
man, kills you some days.
I know. Yeah, it's good and bad. AI could fix it for me. Um, no. Oh, as when we were talking about like kind of like the remember how we got on that subject. But basically, I think like you were talking about you and as far as, people adopting it, you can look at it as like the evil thing that's gonna, you know, take over your thought processes and all that kind of stuff. I'm actually my plan this summer, I submitted no, I didn't that one I didn't. I submitted a couple IRBs, but this one I'm still working on. I didn't get it finished before I left on vacation a couple weeks ago. But what I'm gonna try to do. So we have these assessments that we do. They are essay type tests. It's kind of there's three in this fall semester and three in the spring, and there's one question from each course. But it's all competency based rubrics and they're essay questions, all based around a case. So it's putting all the information from the different classes into a case presentation, basically. And it's all typing out feedback in ExamSoft and selecting, competency levels for the students. And what I'm planning to do is compare how our faculty, the quality of, it's the quality of the faculty feedback to the student because we're a competency by design program. So we do lots of written feedback on lots of assessments of different things, oral presentations and SOAP notes and everything, but it's all competency based. So it's all either live or written responses and then a bunch of feedback from faculty. So what I'm actually going to do is a study to see whether the AI for all the written responses, can AI give higher quality feedback than the faculty? Because me as a faculty member, I'm grading two different questions for 36 students. My feedback is, I'll be honest, it gets pretty surface level by the time you get done with that because of all the grading we all have to do. And I will almost guarantee, like my hypothesis is that the AI generated feedback will be higher quality and of more benefit when judged by outside experts. So that's the study that I'm doing this summer. So I'm really hopeful to show that, but then along with that, a framework in how you can implement it so that it's still your feedback um, for that student, right?
So just remember to try and be unbiased going into the study, is all I would say.
Well,
That's difficult.
yes, absolutely.
Totally. Yeah,
Absolutely. That's just my hypothesis is that
I know. Yeah.
that will be the outcome. But the point of the study is to just strictly analyze, be 100% blinded. I'll be recruiting faculty raters that are outside our program, so they don't know who wrote what or how. So it'll all be blinded, and so we'll see how it ends up. But my goal for that is to convince people that it can be a useful tool, and doesn't necessarily, and it can be beneficial for both you and the student.
So I did want to share actual like clinical feedback for you because I use AI on a daily basis with patients. And so I've basically been trying to see where I can utilize it best. And where I find it best is in complex problems. All right. I deal in nursing home patients. I've oftentimes, in the series of patients that I'll just tell you about here in a minute, the lowest number of medications the patients had was 13. The highest number was 36. And so what I did was I tried to figure out where can I use it in terms of being able to provide good decision-making processes for my patients. I have now 7 patients that I'm looking at. I use it for blood sugar control. So diabetics, they're usually multi-comorbidities. So they have diabetes, morbid obesity, hypertension, peripheral vascular disease, etc. So there's not any patient that's like a straightforward. I haven't found someone that's straightforward yet, unfortunately, but I have patients, blood sugars and hypertension, end-stage renal disease patients, patients with edema. The other area it works in is psychiatry as well. Has been very good. And on these patients, I'll give you the one example that's the longest running one that I've had. Initially, when I had the patient to begin with, they had hypertensive emergency. She was a transfer into my service. Average blood pressure was like 170 to 190 over like 90, 100. And so I used AI to basically, because she's on 6 different blood pressure medications, I didn't even really know where to start. And in addition to that, she's on 24 other medications, right? And what it was able to do was to basically provide me with which medications to choose. And it gave me a whole strategy about how to um, get that patient's blood pressure first under control and then reduce the medications. And that patient is down to 3 blood pressure medications at this time and totally under control, is what I would say. And for the previous 6 months had been hypertensive urgency emergency, which it's not good care in the nursing home even there. But this was just a very, very glaring example. And the AI was able to help me strategize with that because what I would have had to have done was send that patient out to a cardiologist. And usually when I do that, what happens is that they get more medication, not less medication. And so by basically using AI to form a strategy, it helped me. I had to give it blood pressures, heart rates, um, labs, so basic metabolic panel, etc. So we knew what the creatinine function was because we were using diuretics, etc. But giving it all of that medication, all of that information, it was able to successfully use a strategy. And like I said, I'm now using it in diabetes and end-stage renal patients and psychiatry patients also, because those are big needs in the nursing home. We have a lot of patients with those. So that's some, I would say, positive information about how you can use this and how powerful a tool it is. It does really well with complex problems. And you don't have to, like, I don't give any like HIPAA data to the AI. I just give it data and then ask it for strategy about how to go about doing something that I want to do. And then I use objective data to keep it on track.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Do we know, in terms of medical treatment, how AI has been informed? Like, for instance, with the diabetes, do they have all of American Diabetic Association recommendations and things like that? Like, how is
It
our
has access to it, yeah. Because it will oftentimes it will give. So I wrote a paper on this particular one patient, right? And it gave me all of the references for the paper. And then I added in some additional references for that paper. I'm happy to share that with anyone that would like to look at it. I'm not necessarily going to publish it because it's a single case study,
Mhm.
but it kind of goes through exactly what I did and then how I tracked the data objectively to reinforce what it was I was doing.
So generally, all the established textbooks of medicine and things that we would use or the association recommendations, we know or assume have all been uploaded or
it has access to them through many, many different areas, is what I would tell you.
Okay.
And so it when I wrote the paper, it gave me two of the references that I wanted
Right.
already. But then in addition to that, I added further reference into that.
Because I'm just thinking, what if there comes a time where, for instance, there's limited access to certain areas, of education or teaching or whatever, where now there has to be a payment and, that type of
Mhm.
thing. Like, I don't know if that type of thing would ever come about. Um,
I would say it certainly could do. And I think that you've seen that. I think over the 20 plus years that I've been in education, right? It used to be you just go to the library and you could pick out any book, any journal from the library, right? And that's how I wrote my master's degree was through that. I was at the University of Colorado, but I was living in Michigan part of the time, and so I used the University of Michigan library system and was easily able to do all of that work. Now it's nearly impossible to do that work because the University of Michigan uses like electronic access, and so you have to actually be a part of the University of Michigan system to access that, and that was not the case back in the 2000s when I graduated.
so if we train new clinicians to use AI for potential treatment suggestions, but
Mhm.
then later on find out that AI is not fully informed with all the potential treatment suggestions.
I
That
would
would,
say that it's going to go that way anyway, because what you're seeing is that people are developing separate AI models, right? So what you're going to see is that basically there's going to be an AI that is very specifically designed for medical type scenarios. And then I would just say, based upon observation of human societies, the complexity builds upon that. And then we start to build the walls between each other, right? So if you look at the medical system, when I graduated, I was responsible for 10 different systems on, I can look back at my pants and see that there were 10 different systems at that time. Now you look at your PANRI or your PANTS uh, certifications, you'll see that you're responsible for about 16 to 20 different areas of medicine, right? And
yeah.
that's the expansive. That's why I think in some ways AI is just the next generation of the library. It's just that
Yeah.
it's more easily accessible.
It's just a general area of concern to get too dependent upon one thing that you no longer have access to in the
Absolutely,
future.
100% agree with you.
How do we
100% agree with you.
prevent, that from limiting the medical knowledge that we're offering, patients and communities and things like that? It's a lesson in, making sure we have other avenues of education, I think. So thank
One
you.
thing
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to add to this conversation, which I think is fantastic, because I think it's just this amazing case example of the reality of our complex patients and how are we doing this and how you had a successful outcome. And I think it's helpful, at least in this clinical aspect, when we say AI, we all think we are saying meaning the same thing, right? And while this case may be a large language model story, there is some work done on retrieval augmented generation, which is in short, having a system that has known true information and essentially uses the AI to interrogate that known true information. So, Linda, in your case I think if we're talking about ChatGPT, well, it's been fed all over the internet all the time. And there's problematic piece of that because what version of a guideline is out there and all of that is true. But if my sense is that when this becomes clinically active, because I think that this will be a clinical reality. I think that there will be validated, clinically focused, clinician focused systems and I think it's going to involve something to do with retrieval augmented generation so that if American Diabetes Association has a new set of guidelines, you essentially get rid of the PDF of the old guidelines and put the new PDF of the new guidelines, and then it uses that piece. And I think that that can help it. But the reality is that clinically focused, this is going to be all very it needs to be validated within the system. So like it needs to be tested in that system. But what we're finding out just from this case study is that already with no training and no RAG, it had a positive clinical outcome. So, th this
Right.
story is going in this direction.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, I try to use objective information. I don't treat it as a panacea. I don't trust it to make the decisions. It oftentimes will coax me to try and make the decision, and I'm like, no, that's not why I'm using this. I'm using it for purely for strategy. It gives me ideas, right? And they're ideas that I just would not have come up with as quickly myself. It's not that I wouldn't have, but it would have taken me probably 6 months to get this patient under control. Realistically, having to send them out to a cardiologist, having multiple providers interact with it, and I was able to get it under control in a month, like within 4 weeks. And that was primarily because I had to wean a lot of the medications off, and I couldn't. They were on catapress patch, which took like 4 weeks to wean them off of that, right? And that was part of the problem was the patient was getting way too much medication.
I think that's how I see the clinical side of it as well, is just that we have so much data now. Like I can have a likelihood ratio and a pretest probability and a like so for every single, thing I'm going to do, and is this exam maneuver evidence-based? And so to me, it's less about let me plug in what the symptoms are and give me a diagnosis as much as it is validating like I'm following a path that is evidence-based, or that I'm following this logical algorithm that I can back up and say, I didn't ask you to just give me an answer. I asked you for what is the most sensitive test for XYZ kind of thing.
Yep, I would agree with you 100%.
And I'll throw in my enthusiastic pro point of view. I think like Linda and you guys bring up the good idea, like, these bottlenecks can happen to where you don't have access to the information. I look at just the fact that I can't remember the statistics on it, but the number of medical articles published like on almost daily basis, it's astronomical. The amount of new medical knowledge that's being pumped out into the ether by the world. I feel like AI is there's literally it's an impossible task for a human being to stay up on the volume of new information that's coming out and to try to bring it all together. I think that is a huge pro of this technology to be able to, if we can, you know, I'd say socialize the access to the information would allow everyone in the world to have a better grasp of the full medical knowledge of the world. That's my plus plug when it comes to that aspect of it, anyway.
So then, not to take it in another direction, but I saw an argument going on Twitter or X or whatever it is about Harvard was going to put everything online. So they had all their courses and everything. And so we have completely democratized all of the information. And so now is everybody just, you know, an expert and a PhD or whatever. And then the faculty were having a discussion about, so what actually changes and defines, why are we going through this process of attending classes, and when we can do them remote, and if you have access to the information, like, so what is the value that I'm bringing as the lecturer? How can I, you know, kind of curate, or like I'm guiding them through, even if I don't have, all the answers, but I'll teach you where to look and how to, evaluate the literature. So that was kind of a fun
I
argument.
love I love that argument because I feel the same way. And I say this to the students probably on a weekly basis. I was like, I only get 8 months for the entire didactic phase of my program. So it's like there's no possible way that me or any of the other faculty in my program can teach you everything you need to know. My goal in 8 months is to teach you how to learn. It's to teach you how to teach yourself. That's really what we're doing. And that like I feel like that's really all medical education is. It's like, here, I'm going to teach you how to learn about medicine, because then you have to do it the rest of your career anyway. So I totally agree, Laura. I love that discussion.
I would go further than that and say that really what we're teaching them is language. we're teaching them the language of medicine, how to be able to communicate effectively in it. I think that if we can go beyond that and teach them critical thought and clinical decision making, then that's where we should be going. And we should be teaching them interpersonal communication skills. I think the focus needs to come off of basically passing these tests, and getting back to how do I teach this student how to critically think? I mean, you think about it. Do you want to go to a clinician who does not have the ability to critically think about what it is they're doing and then reevaluate that if something goes wrong? I know I don't.
Hey, Katie, I see you just popped in. Sorry, people are getting in from the old Zoom link and stuff, so sorry if you got stuck over there. But and for anybody who joined after with all the link problem, there's zero structure. We're just talking about AI. It was kind of, if you saw it on the PLC, I posted it just kind of an open office hours, like come discuss, ask questions, things like that. Accurate. Yeah. Catherine, you're muted if you're talking.
Yeah, I just have kind of a different direction. I have a question if anybody was using like the augmented reality type of stuff as far as getting that into like helping training with some of this virtual reality type of situations to mimic, maybe a model patient or putting in central lines or suturing or anything like that. If anybody had found a source for that for the classroom.
I can chime in. I saw somebody else had their hand up, but my controls don't let me raise my hand today for some reason. We're a relatively new program, only in our fifth cohort. So we designed some VR patient simulation into our curriculum. The primary one we use to emulate patients that are interactive is through Oxford Medical Simulation. We've been working closely with them. When we started, it happened to be when they were making a big move from nursing centered training to provider or clinician centered training. So we've been working pretty closely with them to give them feedback on their clinician based scenarios, and it's been pretty good. They've been continually updating it. From the outset, it depended on essentially a gaming computer tied to a headset, to where now it's just the Quest headset. Um, they've started integrating AI natural language recognition, so you can speak to it without having to choose from predetermined menus. So it's been a good platform. I know there's others, but we've been using that pretty regularly.
That's cool. I didn't know they had that with on the Quest headsets where it's just natural language processing. Because I know that our sim department does some Oxford simulation cases. We don't have any of it integrated into our curriculum. We just haven't gotten to that point or have room to do it at this point, honestly. Probably. But that's awesome because the ones that I had seen, Alan, were the like you have to click, you have it was a headset, but it was like you have to move the little joystick to click on the monitor to see what it is, or
Right.
and then the different things like that. But that's really cool that it's evolved into just NLP and
And
more fluid movement through the case.
And over the last year, they've also been developing a creation platform. So you don't have to know programming language, but you can start to create your own. You can modify the existing cases and avatars. So we're actively starting a project to develop some PA centric cases, sort of doing some mapping to ARC-PA standards and NCC PA blueprints and things like that.
Cool. Alan, Lisa wants to know how many you own.
Yeah, so we started out that the students bought their own as sort of a technology fee. It's morphed into a Mayo purchasing agreement, so we get a little bit of a discount to buy the all. We have 24 students in each cohort, and so we get a little discount ordering it from the Mayo standard place. I think it's oh shoot, the name escapes me. One of the big electronics and technology vendors. We have a institutional account with them, so we order them and they get a Mayo Clinic IT identification tag on them. Up to this point, the students still get to keep those through the program. We're working with our IT department to develop a digital device management system so that we can run updates universally. We don't have to depend on telling the students, okay, before you come to this class with the simulation, update your headsets and then hope that they do that. We've tried a few different MDM products and it just hasn't worked, or the subscription was too expensive. So that's still in the works. No, it's not IBM. It's gosh, something data warehouse. I can't remember what it is. IBM's just down the road though, so that would make it convenient.
Well, nobody else is talking. So, Emily, you said if I need a higher N, it might be a stronger study with multiple institutions. I really thought about that. I thought about coming to this group and trying to get a bunch of people together to do the same thing. The only thing that I thought of, or I mean, the only thing that that steered me away from it was number one, logistics. Number two was the just the fact that it would, I guess it would be, well, I guess it would just be a wider range of assessments that you would do, right? Because none of our programs have the same assessments because we do everything different, right? So we all have different types of those assessments, like kind of essay based with written feedback things. So I guess it would just be identifying other people with similar types of things that I could do a multi-center or multi-institution um, evaluation
Yeah,
of
it's
the
not,
project.
yeah, it's a challenging proposition. I think it's not going to be clean either way. I agree. Like the IRB, like even if we standardized or tried to make the same assessment, between programs, that's going to be pretty hard. I just worry that like an N of 35 is going to be like
Too small.
harder to prove.
Well, but
And
the
so
thing is,
if we can like leverage the group in some way, and find a way that we could all get in together to actually, produce a like bigger, uh, you
yeah.
know, pool of
Well,
evidence, I think that would be really cool. But again, I get it. It's probably going to be really challenging.
well, and for the end, I have enough studies. So I have it's between 8 to 9 questions times 36 students times six different assessments. So I've got like it's over 600 N. So for pairwise comparison, AI versus human. So it's a pretty good N when it comes to that. But I guess the broader applicability would be better if I could do it because Alicia or Emily, it wouldn't have to be the exact same assessment. Like I wouldn't have to get your program to do my test or vice versa. I just would have to say, hey, Emily, which assessments in your program have the students do a supervised or in class lockdown browser, whatever it is, a written essay assignment for something that they get basically graded on a competency level. It's a competency based rubric and they get written feedback, like a structured single spot written feedback. Like what assessments in your program have that? And you could do the exact same pairwise comparison. It just would be using your assessment. Does that make sense? So you're still doing
Yeah.
pairwise comparison. You're still doing pairwise comparison of AI versus faculty generated feedback. Um, it just would give you a broader applicability.
Yeah. I
Unless,
think that's
unless my,
totally feasible. Yeah, I don't think methodologically it would change much as long as it was similar-ish, uh,
yeah,
like degree of assessment. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, well, maybe I'll put
maybe
them
someone that's a better, farther along
a better
methods person
statistician than I am. Yeah.
could weigh in. Uh, I'm a first year PhD student, but that doesn't. I still have a while to go. So.
I would say that a good follow on to that, Casty, would be, and I'm going on your hypothesis is what I would say, and my bias towards AI too is that you're going to be able to fine tune and refine your response and feedback to the student, right? That's the thing too, is that um, I do that with all of the content that I generate and all of the assessments that I do. I try to make it so that it's maximally engaging for them um, in their particular perspective. So that's just interesting way of trying to. I don't know how you're going to figure out, were they able to read it all or did they read it all that kind of stuff. But I just figure that if you can make it so that they relate to it best, then you've got your best opportunity. That's
Yeah.
my mindset.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing. So I'm still putting together like the rubric on which the feedbacks will be graded, like kind of against each other, like applicability to the rubric and utility to the student and all that kind of stuff. So, but I want to get off my thing. Alicia asked a good question. Has anybody started to incorporate any type of AI analysis for your CASP applications? I'm wanting to. I know that. So I'm on our institutional AI committee, and I got a recommendation from the DO side. The DO central application thing now has integrated AI, so it's basically going to help them. They did a pilot the last admission cycle, and now it's implemented this year, I think, nationwide. That programs can use it to help to analyze applications. So
Yeah, there's a handful of studies that are published on it about other medical schools using it. I was just curious if anyone had done that yet in a prior year, and I was assuming you could feed a closed chat bot a bunch of your prior years that you had graded, so you could train it the way you graded on your rubric, and then train the model and then feed it yours, and then you could still have double readers however you want to do it, right? So then you have your your grade and then the AI grade, and it's probably going to be about the same, but then you could average it. But it would cut down substantially on the CASPA essay. So I was just curious if anyone had done it yet. So
I've thought about this and how what would the implementation of this look like? And I feel like exactly what you're saying, Alicia. You'd have to do something like that. So you'd have to make the platform, right? In the way that you're describing. And then you have to test the platform, right? So you have to basically test it against your faculty or a faculty group of some type. And if you're doing it for your specific institution, because all of our missions and goals and everything like that are so variable as well, and the way that we evaluate applications. So I look at it in the fact that it's probably going to take me for my institution 3 cycles to get it to where it would offload the faculty workload, probably at least 2 cycles.
So
And
I'm
then
going to
just
play devil's advocate for you, Casty, and say, okay, so how are you going to prevent yourself from creating a amplified situation, meaning that we already have a problem with diversity within the community, and how you're going to prevent that from just being exacerbated because all of your information is going to be based off of the pre-existing community. And so,
Well, and not necessarily based off your pre-existing community. So what I would say, Ewan, is I wouldn't
mhm,
base it off of previous applicant pools.
mhm.
I would strictly do a grading system for any application, right? So it's all in the rubric that you build for the system to
Yep.
utilize, right? So it's all in the rubric. And then the thing is that all of our reviews, my personal review of a CASPA file is very different. A rating that I would give one applicant could be completely different than what one of the other faculty members would do. So that in and of itself, the subjectivity of our reviews
Oh,
of
yeah.
CASPA applications are basically bad in and of itself.
Mhm.
So to be honest, yeah, like how that would implement, I have no idea where
It's
you
an
could get
extremely
to the
interesting question.
non-biased, where you could. My goal would be to remove the bias, remove my
Yep.
bias, my
Yep.
colleagues' bias, right? To make it into a truly unbiased process. But again, it all comes down to the rubric that you put together and base it off of. So.
I also can't imagine, like, there's no way that not, at least not 75% of the CASPA that's currently being submitted is not being at least through AI, at least one. Like that, an
No,
applicant who's not doing
well,
that is
that's
very
fine
poor.
because they have
AI
to
is
click
the
the
new seat.
box.
Like there's no way. And so us and in our institution training for AI, they said that students are expecting us to use AI to help grade and then us get personal feedback in addition to that. And so I think it's somewhat expected that we're using AI to assist with grade. It was just a really interesting thought, and I was just
Right. And in some ways, I would say that that's exactly the problem. I would say that you're going to exacerbate the already pre-existing technology divide that exists within our society, right? So if you come from a relatively small rural school with poor resources, who doesn't have access to AI, you don't have the funds to be able to buy ChatGPT and use it, right? Now you're at a significant disadvantage to someone who has all access to that stuff.
there is a published study that said lower income states use AI more for their writing than higher income because they're not equipped to write. So they're actually submitting at those undergrad universities more. And so that was a really interesting training study.
That's interesting to hear. That's good to hear.
All right. Well, it's 2:01. Sorry. I literally would stay on here all day, but everybody, thanks for coming. So take off if you need to. Do you guys like do you guys find this beneficial? Just get on and chew the fat a little bit, throw some stuff out. So awesome. Because I'll be honest, I had no time to put anything together for this week. So this is what we did. And it's fine.
Every now and again, it's good to have like a topic to discuss. And so
Yes.
some
Yeah,
direction is good.
absolutely. Absolutely. So
Hey, one
yeah,
last thing. I'd be a lousy campaigner if I didn't remind everybody that the APA elections open Monday. It'll be in your email. I'm running for president, so read my stuff and give me some consideration.
absolutely. Thanks, David. All right,
Thank you.
everybody. Well, have a great week. Have a great month, and I'll see you 4 weeks from now.